Hi, this is Bill Federer, and we're going to talk a little bit about elections and how to influence elections. And one of the important things to understand is people can't vote for what they don't know about. And so there's a large effort to try to control what people know. And a change happened in the early 1900s with magazine advertising. Edward Bernays was the pioneer in this area. And he noticed that people will buy something if they see other people buying it, keeping up with the Joneses. And so he wrote a book called Propaganda, later changed the name of the term to public relations. And he said, a large manufacturer of women's shoes has a popular actress wear the shoes. The fashion spreads. The man who injected this idea into the shoe industry was ruling women in one department of their social lives. So women think they're buying shoes. They're not. The marketing executive for the shoe company picked out the shoes for them, paid the actors to put them on, paid the photographer to take the pictures, paid the magazines to do this ad campaign. The women buy the magazines and see it. And he said, okay, let's just take this ability to influence the buying of shoes to the influencing of public policy. And so Edward Bernays wrote, today the minority has discovered a powerful help in influencing the majority to mold the minds of the masses. They find in propaganda a tool which is increasingly powerful in regimenting the public mind. And so this concept is America is a country from the consent of the governed, right? It's government from the consent of the governed. But what if you could engineer the consent of the governed? So he wrote a book called The Engineering of Consent. And he said, manipulation of the opinion of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of the country. So what we see is this effort to control what people know. The power of media began to flex its muscles during the Spanish-American War. And so you had the Spaniards were treating the Cubans terrible, starving about 250,000 of them to death, and they couldn't escape the island of Cuba. So there was a cry going out, but America was not interested in getting involved. And so William Randolph Hearst, who owned the New York Journal, and Joseph Pulitzer, who owned the New York World, began to publish articles about the atrocities that were taking place down in Cuba. And now their papers were printed on inexpensive paper, which would turn yellow after a couple of days. And so this motivation to use their journalism to push the country toward this war is called yellow journalism, because the papers had turned yellow after a couple of days. And one of the stories during this time was the papers did not print photographs yet, but they would print etchings, sketches, pictures. And so they needed artists that could draw pictures. And so William Randolph Hearst sends Frederick Remington, a famous artist, to Cuba with the note, you furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war. So he realized, hey, if we can, let people know about these terrible atrocities, then the country will get involved, which they did. But the idea of controlling the media, back then it was newspapers, but then it graduated to radio and then television. And one of the classic examples of the influencing of the public was the Nixon-Kennedy debate. Now, Richard Nixon was the vice president for Eisenhower, and he was very popular, but there was a new candidate named John F. Kennedy. And so they had the first televised debate, and Nixon refused to wear makeup. Now, the studio lights were very, very bright, and they would make the bags under your eyes look really blue, and you'd look really shot and worn out. But people listening to radio couldn't see that. So everyone that listened to the radio thought that Nixon won the debate hands down. But everybody that saw it on television, particularly the ladies, Kennedy looked young and handsome, and Nixon looked old and tired out. They would say Kennedy won the debates hands down. And so this became an understanding that running for office is not necessarily presenting the best ideas. It's how you can present yourself to the public. And it let the media know that they were, in a sense, in control of the elections, because you can't vote for what you don't know about, and what you know about is what's told you by the media. And this idea of influencing the media even went back as far as Athens. So you had the Greeks were a country without a king. If there's a king, you got to lobby the king. But in Athens, the people were in charge. And so how do you influence the whole city? You get everybody together in an amphitheater and you put on plays, comedies, satires, tragedies, where you make some points of view look silly and stupid and others look noble. And from that time till now, theater media has always been political in a country where it's the people that make the decisions. And so we began to see this effort to want to sway the people. So putting this into a little domino form, in America, the country is controlled by laws, but laws are controlled by politicians, and politicians are controlled by voters. But the voters are controlled by public opinion, and public opinion is controlled by media in the short run, education in the long run, church, and the internet, because now all of them use the internet. So if you can control the internet and you can begin to censor the voices of some candidates and some positions, now they have algorithms. Google was notorious for search engines, where if you would put in, and this was done and proven, that when Hillary was running for president against Trump, if you put in the name Hillary Clinton, it would pull up positive articles about her. And you put in Trump, it would pull up negative articles about him. And they would be able to comb through the internet and immediately use the algorithm to find out positive or negative, because they realize that people vote on what they know. And what they know is given to them through information sources. And the internet is a powerful information source. And so this concept of influencing it, even in 1963, Albert Herlong was a congressman in Florida, and he listed these famous 45 goals of communists to take over a country. And several of them were infiltrate the press, gain control of key positions in radio and TV, and infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. And so this idea of influencing the press became a very important part in running elections. And so I do an American Minute, and I post different stories with history that's applicable to what's going on today. Greek philosopher Plato said, one of the penalties of refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. So we need to be involved, but we need to realize the role of media. In America, at first, only property owners could vote, and then business owners could vote, primarily because most of the voting was who's going to pay taxes to support the government. And then they broadened it to men. And then after the Civil War, the 15th Amendment allowed Black men. And then the 19th Amendment in 1919, easy to remember that date, allowed women to vote. And then you began to have other countries. So in 1944, France allowed women to vote. And of course, Britain preceded America shortly. Italy was 1946, as was Venezuela. Japan and Taiwan were 1947, women could vote. And then Kenya was 1963, women could vote. But even in Muslim countries today, for example, in 1980, Iraq allowed women to vote, Qatar 1997, Bahrain 2002, and Kuwait 2005. But even today, in many Muslim countries, women still cannot vote. When President Biden gave Afghanistan to the Taliban, a reporter went over there and said, "Oh, can women vote in Afghanistan now that the Taliban has taken over?" And they laughed. It says Afghanistan, Taliban laughed when asked if Afghans can vote for women politicians. So this idea of you want to present your ideas, but people don't know your ideas except through means of communication. Media in the short run, education in the long run. Church is a way of communicating, but all of them today are using the internet. So media realizes its power. And that's why there's this movement of wanting to control the Facebook, and silence people of opposing views. The Google censoring the search results, YouTube censoring voices. And they actually, it's interesting, they blame you for what they're guilty of. So if they're in power, they want to claim anybody that disagrees with them is spreading misinformation or disinformation. And of course, their point of view is always presented as correct. And now we see a little of the headlines with Elon Musk buying Twitter, and this idea that, hey, other people want to get in this game because they realize that you have to get your message out. So the media can ignore some points of view. They can say good things about you, bad things about you, or no things about you. And the no things is the worst because people don't even know you exist. So for new politicians, if they got some backbone, they don't mind negative ads because, or negative news reports, because it at least gets their name out there. And then some people will do a little digging. It's not the ideal way to do it, but it at least gets your name out there that you're at least a player. And then other different things they do is get lots of candidates involved in a race, and they dilute your opponent's base. So if you had lots of conservatives running, they're all great, but they're going to divide the conservative vote and allow a more liberal candidate to win. That's one of the tactics. Another is encouraging voters of another party to switch and vote in the opposite party's primary election. Another's a tactic called race baiting, and it's been used throughout history. You know, you get the Irish stirred up to vote Democrat, or you get the Italians to vote a certain way, or the German immigrants a certain way. And more recently, it's been used with black and white issues, but it's tapping into an emotional motivator to turn people out to vote. Another is called fear mongering, where you want to get people into fear. Fear is a motivator. 1938 radio drama War of the Worlds. Orson Welles was the announcer, and he says, "We interrupt this program to announce that New Jersey is being invaded by Martians." And everybody in the country immediately panics, looks up in the sky for spaceships. It was a phenomenon where they realized that fear can motivate people. And so this got into politics with fear mongering. You want to get people into fear. And then we see intimidation at polls. In the, Lincoln Republican freed the slaves. Democrats in the Deep South started the KKK, and they would intimidate blacks. And then Ulysses S. Grant pushed through an anti-KKK law, but it was to limit these Democrat vigilante groups. But now we have Antifa, BLM, and so forth. There's lots of ways to get people. Sometimes candidates would pay people to vote for them, which is illegal, but they call it street money, and they do it as long as they don't get caught. But the main one I want to end with is this thing called psychological projection, where they blame you for what they're guilty of. And it's every day. They do it against you. They call you divisive when they're divisive. They call you hateful when they're hateful. They say that you want to destroy democracy when they want to destroy democracy. They say you want to destroy the Constitution when they want to that you want to do voter fraud when they're doing voter fraud. They accuse you of wanting to steal the election when they're stealing the election. It's a tactic in the Bible. Right? Potiphar's wife accused Joseph of lusting after her when she was lusting after him. And Nero set fire to Rome and blamed the Christians. So this is the idea that corrupt candidates will accuse the innocent candidate of being corrupt. And then lastly is October surprise. So they'll, if you ever run for office, you'll learn this stuff. There's a position in many campaigns called opposition research. And all this person does is dig up dirt all day long on their opponents. And when they find things that are either real dirt or something that could look like dirt, they save it all and they call it an October surprise, because they release it in October, which is right before the election in November. So you see, oh, there's this candidate, he's growing real popular, and all of a sudden, the week before the election, it comes out that way back when he had an affair, or way back when he cheated on his taxes, or way back then. And the public is like confused, but they can even lie. Harry Reid lied about Mitt Romney not paying his taxes, and Mitt Romney suffered a defeat. And afterwards, they did an interview with Mitt Romney. I mean, they did an interview with Harry Reid, and they said, "You lied. He did pay his taxes." And Harry Reid said, "Yeah, I know, but it worked, didn't it? Didn't it? He's not elected." So this is the idea. And I tell people, if a candidate can mentally justify killing baby, what's voter fraud? What's lying during a campaign? And so we're dealing with people that if they don't have any morals in their minds, the ends justifies the means. Now, why do we share all this? Well, first of all, you don't want to be manipulated. You don't want to get caught up in, oh, there's some breaking news week before the election. This candidate that I've been supporting, all of a sudden there's this bad stuff about him. Don't believe any of it, right? It's part of the opposition research stuff. And we have to do our own digging. But it's important for us to know these tactics, but we still have to get our information out, our message out, and we can do that and use social media and so forth from our point of view. And Turning Point is probably the premier organization that knows how to reach out and get a message out via social media. So what you're doing is very important. I'll end with that and wish you the best. Thank you. Sorry.